Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Azerbaijan says it has liberated 13 more villages in the Karabakh region from the Armenian occupation. President Ilham Aliyev said Armenia has violated the ceasefire by using heavy artillery on Azeri residential areas. He said Azerbaijan's army retaliated befittingly and liberated several settlements. The United States has dismissed Taliban's accusations of violating the Doha peace deal. US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said unfounded charges of violations and inflammatory rhetoric do not advance peace. He said the belief that violence must escalate to win concessions at the negotiating table is very risky. Israel and Bahrain have signed a joint communique in Manama to establish full diplomatic relations. At the signing ceremony, Bahrain's foreign minister said the country is committed to the two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Bahrain has now become the fourth Gulf state to recognize Israel after the UAE, Egypt and Jordan. The number of global COVID-19 infections is approaching 40 million, with more than 1.1 million deaths. India's infections tally has topped 7.5 million, with nearly 56,000 new cases and 579 deaths overnight. Here in Pakistan, 5 people lost their lives to the virus since yesterday, taking the toll to 6,659. And in tennis, Russian third seed Andrei Rublev beats Croatia's Zvona Koric 7-6 and 6-4 to lift the St. Petersburg Open trophy. With this victory, Rublev has joined Novak Djokovic as the only man to win the most singles titles this year. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We'll start from Azerbaijan, which says it has liberated 13 more villages in the Karabakh region from the Armenian occupation. President Ilham Aliyev said Armenia has violated the ceasefire by using heavy artillery on the Azeri residential areas. Aliyev said Azerbaijan's army retaliated befittingly and liberated several settlements. Both sides have accused each other of violating the new truce in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres condemned attacks from both sides and urged them to abide by the humanitarian truce. Earlier, Azerbaijan said its security forces shot down another Armenian warplane, the second in as many days. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has accused the US, Russia and France of providing military support to Armenia. Now, more than 700 people have been killed in the fighting since it broke out on the 27th of September. Now, the US has dismissed Taliban's accusations of violating the Doha peace deal. US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said unfounded charges of violations and inflammatory rhetoric do not advance peace. Khalilzad said the belief that violence must escalate to win concessions at the negotiating table is very risky. He pointed out although violence in Helmand has decreased, violence remains high in the country overall. Khalilzad said high levels of violence can threaten the peace process. Earlier, the Taliban warned Washington of consequences if it does not stop bombing areas other than combat zones in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, veteran leader of the Hizb-e-Islami party, Bulletin is set to visit Pakistan for talks on the Afghan peace process. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office said Hikmatyar and his delegation will arrive in Islamabad today for a 3-day visit. It said Hikmatyar will meet President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan. The Foreign Office said he will also meet Chairman of the Senate, Sadiq Sanjrani, and Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. It said Hikmatyar visit will provide an opportunity for the exchange of views on the Afghan peace process and the strengthening of bilateral ties. And Pakistan has always backed a comprehensive political settlement through an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process. Moving on now, Israel and Bahrain have formally signed a joint communique in Manama to formalize relations. Bahrain's foreign ministry says his country is committed to the two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Speaking at the signing ceremony, Abdullah Al-Zayani said it was indeed a historic visit of the Israeli delegation. He said engagement and cooperation are the most effective and sustainable way of bringing about lasting peace in the region. As per the signed deal, both countries promised not to take hostile actions against one another, but it did not include any reference to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Bahrain has now become the fourth Gulf state to recognize Israel after the UAE, Egypt and Jordan. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has warned arms sales to Iran will breach UN resolutions and result in sanctions. This comes after Tehran said the long-standing UN embargo on arms trade with the Islamic Republic had expired. In a statement, Pompeo said the United States is prepared to use its domestic authorities. It said Washington will sanction any individual or entity involved in supply, sale or transfer of arms to or from Iran. Pompeo said nations that seek peace in the Middle East must refrain from arms transactions with Iran. He added providing arms to Iran will put more dangerous weapons into the hands of terrorists and proxies. Tehran can now purchase weapons from any country and has hailed the expiration of the embargo as a diplomatic victory. Meanwhile, Saudi King Salman bin Abdul Aziz has ordered to restructure the country's advisory council, Supreme Court and the highest religious body. State media said the orders appointed a new speaker and two deputies for the council and influential advisory body. Under the orders, one of the two deputies appointed is a woman. The orders further seek reformation of Council of Senior Scholars to be headed by Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdul Aziz Al Sheikh. King Salman also appointed a new Supreme Court Chief, Khalid bin Abdullah Al-Luhaydan. He also named Ghayab Muhammad Al-Ghayab as a senior advisor to the Royal Court. Now, Japan and Vietnam have agreed to step up defense, security and economic cooperation. The two sides have signed a deal under which Japan will export military gear and technology to Vietnam. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga says Vietnam is key to realize free and open Indo-Pacific. At a press briefing with his Vietnamese counterpart, Suga said they have agreed on restarting business track travel. He added passenger flights between the two countries will also be resumed. Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc said Vietnam welcomes Japan to continue to actively contribute to global peace and prosperity. The two sides signed a deal in Hanoi as Suga visits Vietnam for his first overseas trip as Premier. Now, the Prime Minister of Northern Cyprus, Ersin Tatar, has won the state's presidential election runoff. The head of the electoral body, Narin Ferdi Sefik, announced Tatar got nearly 52% of the votes. In his victory speech, Tatar thanked Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He said the world must respect the fight of Turkish Cypriots to live independently and honorably under its own roof. Tatar was facing incumbent President Mustafa Akinci, who received just over 48% of the vote. Tatar is a supporter of separate administrations on the Mediterranean island. Only Turkey recognizes the country as an independent state, while other countries consider it part of Cyprus. More news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, the number of global COVID-19 infections is approaching 40 million, with more than 1.1 million deaths. India's infection tally has topped 7.5 million, with nearly 56,000 new cases and 579 deaths overnight. This report has details.
Just when countries thought they had managed to control the transmission of COVID-19, the virus has the world on the ropes again with the surging second wave. In the US, new cases are rising in almost every state as the country braces for a possible third peak. But new restrictions are increasing unpopular among the public. US President Donald Trump has continued his tirade against coronavirus-related curbs, making it even more difficult for state authorities.
Under the Biden lockdown, the lights of Reno and Las Vegas were extinguished. Carson City will become a ghost town. If he comes in, Carson City will become a ghost town. And the Christmas season will be canceled.
While recent data shows that the numbers in Latin America are dwindling, the effects of the pandemic are far-reaching than just death and disease. Europe is now the second hardest-hit region after Latin America and the Caribbean, with over 250,000 deaths. France and the UK too are facing full-blown local transmission with tens of thousands of new cases every day.
The situation is very adverse. There are areas of the country where people queue for 3 or 4 hours to get a plate of food from the community kitchens. The organizations are holding on at full strength since the beginning of the pandemic and without the increase of a single kilo of food by the state.
Meanwhile, the global push for a WHO-approved vaccine continues. The information shared by drug companies show that an immunization is highly unlikely this year.
Now in Pakistan, 5 more people have lost their lives to COVID-19 during the last 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,659. The Health Ministry said 440 people tested positive overnight. The ministry added there are over 9,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of over 323,000 countrywide cases, more than 307,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 141,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 101,000 cases. In the capital, Islamabad, over 18,000 have been infected so far. Now, Britain and the European Union will attempt today to breathe life into the stalled post-Brexit trade negotiations. European Union Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier and the UK's David Frost will hold a video conference to discuss the structure of talks. British Minister Michael Gove said the UK wanted a trade deal and London had not closed the door on the negotiations, but he warned that Britain is well prepared for a no-deal scenario. On October 18th, more than 70 British business groups urged politicians to get back to the negotiating table. The European Union has ignored several deadlines set by UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The bloc said it is not going to rush to a deal which can be catastrophic in hindsight. Now, rallies marking the first anniversary of mass protests in Chile have turned violent, leading to riots and looting. Masked individuals firebombed a police headquarters and jeered and threatened a Communist Party mayor. Now, tens of thousands of Chileans gathered in the central square of Santiago. Angry mobs attacked 2 churches, setting Santiago Church's spire aflame. Police fired tear gas and water cannons to contain the crowd. More than 15 metro stations were temporarily closed amid the unrest. Speaking to media, Interior Minister Victor Perez praised the peaceful rallies while blasted the late-night mayhem. He called on Chileans to settle their differences by voting in the upcoming October 25th constitutional referendum. The last year's mass protests over inequality had left at least 30 dead and thousands injured. Now, in Mexico, the annual festival to celebrate the Day of the Dead has been suspended due to COVID-19. Officials say ratcheting back the celebrations is a sacrifice that must be made to prevent more deaths. Let's know more about this in this report.
If it's the Day of the Dead in Mexico, you are certain to see the bright orange flowers of the Mexican marigold, decorating streets, homes and cemeteries to honor the deceased loved ones. But that color will be dimmer this year as restrictions imposed to halt the spread of coronavirus will keep people inside. On the day, Mexicans keep alive a tradition that blends Catholic rituals with the pre-Hispanic belief that the dead return from the underworld. Cemeteries have also been closed to prevent the further spread of coronavirus.
Yes, of course we are worried. We can't go to the cemeteries, but it would be worse to have more deaths. The people have to stay in their homes. It's important for all of us to take care of ourselves. It's important to not leave home.
The dead are also offered their favorite food, streets, tequila and cigarettes to entice them to return from the underworld. Marigold flower is also known as the flower of the dead in Mexico. They are believed to have a scent as strong and sweet that can attract souls and draw them back. At one nursery in Mexico City, marigold growers said only 50% of the normal was being grown this season.
Right now, we planted 50% of what we plant every year. Why? Because we have suffered, because of the plants that we have been left with, which we have had to throw out. There have been many losses this year.
With cemeteries closed but more dead to remember this year, Mexicans are planning more private remembrances for their loved ones.
Well, now in the age of microchips and video calls, a 65-year-old owner of a repair shop in Cairo is among the few not walking around with a mobile phone. Details in this report.
In the busy Araba market in downtown Cairo, Hassan al-Turki sits on a plush armchair at his phone repair shop. But there's something quaint about his premises. No mobile phones are allowed here, an image reminiscent of the early 20th century. His friends and relatives can instead reach him on his 1898 wooden box telephone. This is one of several vintage phones he owns.
This is my profession, repairing old telephones. My father's and my grandfather's. I inherited it from them. I love it because it is what we are good at. I could have been impacted by the mobile phone market. And if I didn't have any vision, I would have rented this shop for 20,000 Egyptian pound per month. But this is my job.
Al-Turki's collection includes a 1933 piece used by Egypt's late King Farouk and others once owned by Charlie Chaplin and Thomas Hudson. He buys pieces from auctions or collects those discarded in old palaces and villas, restoring them to working condition for other enthusiasts.
Definitely, there are a lot of people who come to my shop. Those who want to fix their landline telephones, they bring it here and I fix them.
Turkey sells some of these pieces and keeps others he intends to pass on to his sons.
Well, now in Germany, a daredevil has set a new world record after crossing the Max Morlock Stadium on a slackline at a height of 73 meters. More in this report.
Slacklining is not for the faint-hearted, especially when it involves walking between the floodlights of a stadium. However, Jens Deck has done this, setting a new record by walking on the longest high line.
Slackline or highline is a sport where we balance on a 25 mm wide flat rope. Here at the Max Morlock Stadium in Nuremberg, we train a slackline over 230 meters from floodlight pole to floodlight pole and walk that at 73 meters height.
The stadium was chosen due to its running track around the infield, which makes it larger and floodlights more spaced out than most. But the team makes great effort to ensure safety.
Everything is safeguarded. Several time overs, we can make sure that nobody comes to any harm here through a redundant system, overlaid with images of security measures and ropes.
For some years now, the team stretches high lines from the Sierra Nevada to Brazil. Their balancing act in Nuremberg has raised the bar once more.
Now, China's industrial output has risen by 6.9% in September as compared to last year. Government data shows industrial output expanded for a sixth straight month, boosting the recovering economy. Beijing's National Bureau of Statistics said robust investment and exports helped boost economic recovery. The world's second largest economy has recovered strongly, growing by 4.9% in the third quarter. China has seen more businesses resume production after measures to contain the spread of the coronavirus were lifted. Retail sales also edged up 3.3% last month from 2019, exceeding analysts' forecast. Fixed asset investment increased by 0.8% more than the first 9 months of 2020 from the same period in 2019. Meanwhile, stocks in the Asia-Pacific are trading mixed as investors react to the release of China's GDP data. Mainland Chinese stocks are trading lower, with both the Shanghai Composite and the Shenzhen component shedding marginally. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index rose more than 0.5%, with HSBC gaining more than 1.5%. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 and the Topix Index have added more than 1%. South Korea's Kospi has also advanced 0.7%. Meanwhile, shares in Australia's rose, with the ASX 200 gaining over 1%. The 21st Wuhan Motor Show has kicked off in central China. Some 400 exhibitors are participating in the 6-day event. This is the largest offline auto show of its kind since the Wuhan city was hit by COVID-19. More details in this report.
More than 150 auto brands are showcasing their various models in the ongoing Wuhan Motor Show. Nearly 20 of them have unveiled their brand new ones at the annual show. China's auto sales rose to 12.8% year-on-year to 2.57 million units as the market warmed alongside government policies to spur consumption. Data from China Association of Automobile Manufacturers show that this is the 5th consecutive month of double-digit growth in the industry.
Our orders have been on the rise since July. Compared with the orders for 150 units placed in October last year, our order placed so far in October this year have already hit 130 units. My peers and I are very confident with China auto market.
The event will also focus on the policies and regulations of the auto industry and difficulties in terms of its development. China's auto industry is expecting the motor show to help the country's auto market emerge from the fallout of COVID-19.
We hope that this auto show will play a positive role in promoting post-COVID-19 recovery of the entire auto industry and accelerating the national, social, and economic recovery.
Organizers hope that the show will promote high-quality development of China's new energy and intelligent internet-connected automobile industries.
Now in tennis, Russian Andrei Rublev beats Croatia's Borna Coric 7-6 and 6-4 to lift the St. Petersburg Open trophy. Having won his 4th ATP title this year, Rublev is now tied with Novak Djokovic for most titles in 2020. The Russian emerged victorious after a tiebreak despite being 2-5 down. Rublev was flawless on his serve and never gave Coric a breakpoint opportunity in the game. Russian third seed will now have to qualify for the next month's ATP finals for the first time. Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal and Dominic Thiem have already qualified for the ATP finals. Now Aston Villa beat Leicester City 1-0 in the English Premier League match. Villa have won their opening 4 top-flight games for the first time in 90 years. Midfielder Ross Barkley rifled a low shot into the bottom corner of the net. With the victory, Villa have got all 3 points to climb to a second in the Premier League. In another clash, West Ham United scored a late goal to draw 3-3 with Tottenham Hotspur in London. Spurs were 3-0 up within 16 minutes thanks to goals from Harry Kane and Son Heung-min. 2 goals in the final moments have Hammers hope before Manuel Lanzini scored a stunner injury time to level the score. With that, we come to the end of the bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.